Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the United Stand. Manchester United 2, Tottenham Hotspur 0. What a result. I said in one of our group chats earlier that if we weren't winning this game, I weren't turning up. That was it. I just weren't going to turn up because I've had enough of losing. I've had enough of abysmal performances. But I think briefly to touch on the match from my point of view, I think it's definitely 100% the best performance we've put in all season. Obviously, it's great to have a win off the back of that because you can play well and not get the win. You know, it happens and it will happen probably later on in the season. Things that we're going to touch on today briefly is, look, not to dampen the mood a little bit, but we are going to talk about that Ronaldo incident towards the end. Obviously, him exiting the pitch at around the 90th minute. I think there's 4 added on minutes, so we're going to touch on that. Obviously, what statement of intent that actually shows from Manchester United. You know, putting a big marker down. Spurs have looked very, very good this season so far. So to have a really, really convincing result against them is obviously unbelievable. Also, towards the end of the show, we're going to be doing a Q&A segment, probably last 10, 15 minutes. So I'll let you guys know when to get the questions in. It doesn't have to be a super chat. You can just obviously do a normal chat and we'll put it to the panelists and myself. But panelists today, we're missing, we're usually 4. We're usually a little foursome. Today, we're a threesome. We got Kev. Kev, how you doing?
I'm all right, mate. I love threesomes, me. Let's do this.
And Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, great after that. Thanks. Good to be here.
Good. I want to start off the show by obviously kind of getting into how good the performance was as a whole, right? Kev, I'll come to you first on this. Obviously, and look, I don't think we're naive enough to kind of think that this is how we're going to play for the remainder of the season. I think, there's always going to be ups and downs. But when your team, when Manchester United can show that there's a performance like that within them, what's stopping them from going and playing this style of football? And we've done it against one of the better teams in the league, Spurs, right? So kind of what's stopping them from going and doing it against, and I know people in the comments are going to say, Aston Villa for a team. They'll play a little bit more defensive and it's a completely different game of football. But for the most part, Tottenham did do a lot of defending, played 5 at the back, and we showed that we can create chances. I think we had something like 18 shots in 36 minutes or something like that. Like, it was ridiculous. So, Kev, what do you think of the performance, basically?
Easily 100% the best performance we've seen under the guidance of Erik Ten Hag. It's better. Although the Liverpool result was great, I didn't think we dominated from start to finish. The same with the Arsenal game. I think that could have gone either way, but 2 very good results. But this, for the full package, 2 goals, from 2 players that we have been highly critical of over the last couple of weeks. When is Bruno going to step up? Are we ever going to see the Bruno Fernandes from his first season, the early days? And today, it was a flashback to that. I thought Fernandes, everything that was positive come through him. Fred is erratic. And today, you can look at the goal, on another day, it's straight into Lloris's arms. It's a pass back, but you still have to be there. You have to do it. Again, question marks have been over Casemiro. I thought he absolutely just shone today. There has been criticism of him. People saying we spent good money on him. Is he physically fit enough for the Premier League? He's answered the critics today, and that's exactly what you want to see from a Manchester United team. Ten Hag's got it spot on from the minute the whistle blew in the first half till the 90, whatever it was, 4th minute. Manchester United bossed this game. I was very, very surprised. And I know, Alex, did you want Conte at some stage? Was it yourself and Jay? I'm not just saying, that's what you could have got, but, well, in a way, you do think it is this kind of, like you've just said, Charlie, you more or less playing with 5 at the back. And the way it was set up today from Tottenham's perspective, you look at it and you think, this is going to be a long game, this. But Tottenham surprised me. I didn't think Conte reacted to the way that Manchester United were playing. And from the second half, we go out there, we get the early goal, changes the game. Again, Tottenham never really got out. But that is testament to Manchester United. I think we pinned them in their half. There are so many positives. I've just mentioned Casemiro, Bruno, even Fred's performance. Yes, it will surprise you. I thought Luke Shaw was amazing. He's really reacting to losing his spot to Malacia. He's stepped up. And the Diego Dallo Appreciation Society has to be set up, man. This guy is the most improved player in that squad. He's been absolutely unreal this season. And again, that's the coaches that have worked with him. And it's down to Dallo as well. There is one sting in the tail that you mentioned that we will talk about, and I don't like that, is the fact that the headlines tomorrow won't be about a brilliant Manchester United performance and win. It's going to be about a person that people say, you know, he's the most professional person in world football. He's an icon, a role model. I'm sorry, you don't do that. He's trying to steal Manchester United's thunder there, Ronaldo, by walking down the tunnel. And I'm not down with that. I don't dig it. And I don't know what kind of a statement or point he's trying to make. You know, there's other players in that squad who were on that bench, waited until the full-time whistle and went out and celebrated as a team. There's that old famous saying, there is no I in team. And Ronaldo, typical Ronaldo, really, you know, he's made it all about him somehow when he should be out there celebrating. I know he's not part of it. He's not got on the pitch. He's still part of Manchester United, and that will make the headlines, sadly, tomorrow. But take nothing away from it. Best performance under Erik Ten Hag so far, 100%.
Yeah, it's a shame to see, as you say, obviously, about Ronaldo. We can obviously touch on it a bit later on. I'll give a few shout outs to some new members joining in. We got Juano, I think is how you say the name. Amir Khan. Maybe I don't know if that's a real Amir Khan. Ben Clarkson, RV Stygian. Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies if I'm actually butchering these names. Jack O'Connor. There you go. That's one I can pronounce. But yeah, it could have been. That could have been awful. I'm very sorry about that. But yeah, I think that it's very hard to kind of, I mean, obviously there's going to be other things we're touching on, but it's very hard to steer away from actually how good that football game was. And obviously that comes down to, you know, the way Manchester United played, Alex, right? But, and I mentioned this before we came on air, like there was like a 30-second period of just, there was a 50-50 all the time and just crunching tackles were going in and you could hear the crowd getting behind these players. And it's just so great to see, and I want to come back to the Bruno point that Kev said, because both goal scorers today, we've obviously I wouldn't say necessarily slated, not necessarily that kind of, or Fred, we've slated Fred. Let's be honest, we've done him a kipper before, but I mean, we just know what kind of Bruno can offer, and that was by far his best game of the season so far, and that's, you know, it basically. Not necessarily that one game, you know, he could go and have a stinker against Chelsea at the Bridge at the weekend. But do you think that with a performance like that, it shows that he is possibly getting back to his best?
I really hope so. I was talking to someone at halftime about Bruno, because I thought in the first 25 minutes of the first half, he was really good. And then in the second half of the first half, he was really bad and had reverted back to what he'd been doing so far in the season. And then we were talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I really hope he has a good second half and he builds on what he's done this half. And then he played a key role in winning the ball back for Fred's initial goal. And then obviously he scored the second. So I really, really hope he builds on it. His form has been, it's been more than just this season. And I know everyone played bad last season, but you normally expect Bruno to set the example. When he first came in, the whole team was playing bad, and he was the shining light and was playing good. And his form just really dipped recently, and then people can make the excuse of that it's been penalties, but that the penalties dried up. But it's a lot more than that, because it was just it's all over. He always gave the ball away his whole time, but he just hasn't been as efficient as he was in the past. But he played really well today, so long may it continue. I thought as well, what Kev touched upon, Casemiro as well. Since he came in and been everyone was calling for him for quite a while to be a regular starter, and you have to kind of tilt your hat to Ten Hag in a way for the fact that he never takes, with whether it's Ronaldo, whether it's Maguire, whether it's Casemiro, he doesn't take the big names into his consideration. McTominay was playing well at the time, so that's why Casemiro didn't get in. And then now Casemiro has got a run of games, and off the top of my head, I don't think we've really conceded a goal, have we? Because he's kept a clean sheet against Everton, kept a clean sheet against Newcastle, kept a clean sheet against that Cypriot team, and then clean sheet again today. And it's we just look so more solid. We've said for so long that we need a defensive midfielder. like since Carrick, really. I know we signed Matic, but Matic was a bit hot and cold at times. When he was good, he was really good. But then he was already past his best when we signed him. So to get Casemiro in and give him a run of games, it's just been an absolute revelation. And long may it continue. Please God, he stays fit. And now we've got a settled backline. De Gea's even started sweeping. I don't know if it was a bit giddy. I said at full time that I think it's like the best. Like, obviously not from a like constant like goal threat perspective, but in terms of like the pressing we were doing and like our build-up play and stuff, I was saying it's like I can't think of a game like since Fergie left even that we've been like that dominant over a team. But then you have to kind of take it with the caveat of like with how Conte plays, it's like you mentioned like Villa before, like how they sit back and stuff, but it's like Spurs sit back in like kind of a different way. And they obviously weren't fully at the races today. But then you could also argue, were they not at the races? Because like I said, we pressed so well and like just we were always in the right place at the right time. As soon as they did get the ball back for a counter, we were instantly on them straight away. So it was a really, really positive performance. And I really hope we build on that because like pretty much everyone had a good game. And I would give a special shout out as well to both Delo and Luke Shaw, who I thought both had a really, really good game.
Yeah, Delo was getting kind of praise from the pundits. What I was watching, and they were saying that it was almost comparisons to Cancelo a little bit in you know the way that he's almost coming into that centre midfield type position when we do have possession. But I want to talk about the first goal. Obviously it was coming for a long time, but it's such a Fred goal, isn't it, Kev?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a. I remember seeing it because I was writing some stuff down at the time, some talking points, and I looked up and I was like, because it was like, well, why hasn't Lloris made a move? And it's literally Fred has passed the ball towards Lloris and it's just come off of, is it Eric Dyer's leg or Romero's leg and gone in the bottom corner? Like, it's the most Fred goal you can get. And I was just thinking, like, when McTominay was getting criticism, he obviously scores against Ammonia. And then you get Fred getting criticism. He now scores against Tottenham. And obviously Bruno now is scoring. So what does this possibly mean? And Fred had a good game today as well. Literally the polar opposite compared to the game before. Like, obviously, I don't think he could have played any worse. But to go from literally probably 3 out of 10 performance to like an 8 out of 10, right? There was still like elements to his game where he was sloppy and gave the ball away. But obviously, when everyone else is having the game of their life as well, it obviously elevates you. But does this put Fred's name possibly back in the hat for a starting position in that Chelsea game at the weekend? Kev, sorry.
I think he'll be in there. Listen, I am not going to lie. When I heard the team sheet tonight, you know, an hour before the match, I rolled my eyes when I seen Fred in the team. Only because I've seen Eriksen on the bench, and I know he was ill at the weekend, but I am a firm believer in, you know, if they're fit enough to be on the bench, surely they should be fit enough for starting. And I would pick Eriksen head and shoulders above Fred any day of the week. He has proved me wrong. You know, I did not expect that from Fred. And I like that. He's definitely a character. You know, he goes around smiling on the pitch and that. The goal today, like I said earlier, it more or less looked like he was trying to just pass it back to Lloris. And it takes a deflection off, I think it was Doherty. It took a wicked deflection, but you have to be there. You have to be placing a shot, you know, from there and be in the right place at the right time. So fair play to him. My one criticism of him, he seems to do like the hard work really well. And there was a couple of instances in the second half where he kind of burst forward and then just a simple pass and you go, oh, he's back to normal. You know, he's bursting forward. But tenacity-wise and the way that he closed down, when Ten Hag first took over, I thought there's something to work with there with Fred. But it's all about staying in your lane. If he can do the things that he does well, which there are certain aspects of closing down, he can win the ball back. But if he can just then give it simple, it would make him look such a better player than what he is. I think as United fans, you get frustrated. You're pulling your hair out because, like I say, it's just the simple things that he doesn't seem to be able to do. And we're talking just a simple pass left, right. You know, he seems to not be able to pull that off. But moments of like little bits of brilliance and you're like, whoa, you know, where did that come from? And then he follows it up with something else and you go, yeah, That's Fred. But listen, after the performance today, he will be in contention, and rightly so, because again, I can't go back on a statement that I always say, is that Manchester United players should be in that team purely on the way that they're playing, at this moment in time. And would you make much changes going in? I'm sure the Ronaldo fanboys will be there saying that he should play against Chelsea and that. But for me, you cannot rip up a team that's just put in a performance like that. I've not seen United press like that I can't even remember. Cannot even remember. We did not give Tottenham a moment's peace today. And that started from the back. Anytime Lloris had the ball, no options. And that's because United were organised, even leading from the front. Rashford, you've got that pace. And Tottenham couldn't get out their own half. They could not get out their own half. And it's a joy to see as a United fan, because we're building towards this. It's what we wanted to see. We thought we might have got it under Rangnick. We didn't, maybe because of the personnel and certain players weren't on board. But if there's one thing, and like Alex has said earlier, if you're not on board with this man, it's his way or the highway. He is not afraid to make the big calls. And the fact that Harry Maguire is still at United, supposed captain, other managers haven't been brave enough to take him out. Erik Ten Hag has done that, and he's reaping the rewards, because Varane and Martinez at the back, plus Luke Shaw now and Dalot, they look a solid back four, and he has ripped that up. It's unrecognisable to the back four under previous managers, which is great to see.
It is indeed. Krishna, thank you for becoming a new member also. And Rory C is saying, we need to discuss how bad at finishing Rashford is. The man ain't a striker. Sitters today, Sitter versus Newcastle. Not to say Ronaldo should have played, but someone needs to be signed, because Martial is just a sick note. We can touch briefly on the striker situation a little bit later on. But off the back of obviously this kind of Fred talk, I want to go into Casemiro's performance. Again, we were touching briefly on his performance off air just before we were going live. And Alex, you were saying that, having Casemiro as an 8 or a 10, and knowing Casemiro is there as your 6, your defensive midfielder, must be so reassuring, right? That he's so good at breaking up play. And I feel like what he's getting rid of is the silly mistakes now. In the first couple of games that he was playing, he was giving the ball away, or he wasn't checking his shoulder. And therefore someone, especially in that Everton game, obviously the goal that they scored, I don't know if it was Onana, was right up his backside and won the ball, and they obviously went on and scored. And I feel like, rightly so, it's definitely being kind of trained, or he's adapting to the Premier League now, the intensity of the Premier League. And I just want to get your thoughts on just comments coming in. Casemiro is the godfather of the midfield, and as you say, someone that we've been screaming out for so long. And don't get me wrong, guys, I do still think there is someone missing from the midfield, not just in terms of depth wise. I do think that Eriksen, as Kev has pointed out, is unbelievable, and it is another player that we were missing. But I still do think that we need that box-to-box midfielder to obviously add kind of strength and depth, and to add an element.
Certain Dutch one that we chased all summer. Or...
yeah, or that certain 19-year-old that plays in that German league would be good as well. But yeah, what do you think about Casemiro's performance today? I thought, I'm pretty sure he only would have come off, obviously, because we're winning. He was on a yellow card, and huge game at the weekend.
Yeah, sorry, I need to correct myself for saying before about the clean sheets against Everton. Yeah, he cost us that goal at the very opening start, but then he still got man of the match. So I feel like a lot of people knew, obviously, from his Real Madrid days, that he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. So you think of that, like, obviously, he's going to be absolutely elite at breaking up the play. But I think something that really surprised me and a lot of people is how good his passing range is. And that was another thing of, like, I used to love Carrick, and then Matic as well, I think, had a brilliant passing range. And that's just something we've missed so much in that midfield in general. Like, when you have McTominay or Fred, and I know Fred is capable, like he did today, a really good pass to Rashford, I think it was. But, like, just in terms of, like, consistent, like, constant passing, and using him as, like, a main source of passing, especially when Eriksen hasn't been playing the last few games. Casemiro is just, like, different class, and it's just... when you add in Casemiro and Eriksen at the same time into our midfield compared to what it was last season, it is just complete and utter level up by so much. And it's just the frustrating thing is, from like a United perspective, and this game has kind of made me change my mind a bit, because I didn't realize like how low teams that Tottenham had been facing to get to this position. But it's like that. I feel like we were winning. Like, apart from the 2 games that we messed up at the start, like we've been basically winning every single game apart from the City and the Newcastle one. And it's just every team around us has constantly won as well. So it's like, I feel like if we don't get top 4, we're still going to absolutely smash what we got in terms of a points tally last season. But it's just that everyone else seems to have got so much better. But obviously, I think the Chelsea game will be a real wake-up call. If we beat them, we've had such a hard start. I can't think off the top of my head a team that's had a harder start than us this season, considering we played City, Liverpool, Arsenal, now Spurs, beat all of them. Chelsea, touch wood, we have a great record recently at Stamford Bridge as well. So it's not out of the question that we can't beat them as well. But to go back to Casemiro, you then have to like raise the question, I know, in terms of results. Like, I don't think if he would have started against City like everyone wanted and I wanted as well, I don't think that would have changed the result, because City is just, we're not at that level yet to be able to. And then people will say, okay, we beat them under Ollie loads of times, but they didn't have Haaland at that point, and they were just so up for it that day that it wouldn't have mattered who we played. But Casemiro has just been an absolute revelation. The only slight worry is his age, because if it's how long we can get these performances out of him. But then, like I mentioned before, Carrick, we got these performances out of him until he was like 36. So if we could get Casemiro playing to at least this level, or like 10% worse for the full length of the contract, the 70-odd million that we paid for him would be money well spent, because it's so frustrating that we've been calling. And don't get me wrong, I don't think any of us expected to get a DM as on the level of Casemiro, because that just kind of came out of the blue, and it was obviously like the Glazers panicking due to our start to the season. But like when people were saying about Declan Rice or like Neves isn't as much a DM, but you know, like someone to play in that position, it's like we've been calling for it for years, and they never bought it. They were signing every position apart from that. And then we've just brought in Casemiro, and now it's completely transformed our midfield. So it's frustrating, like what could have been in years gone by. But I never would have imagined that we would get a defensive midfielder like Casemiro, who has been widely renowned as like the best defensive midfielder in the world for like the past 5 years.
And that's true. That's true, Alex, because you look back to when we spent a hell of a lot of money on a player that the one player that was a little disappointed in tonight in Sancho. You think of the money that we spent then, although it was not, you know, you thought brilliant player for Borussia Dortmund, you know, if he can replicate that in the Premier League. But at the same time, on the United stand, we were asking that same question. And because we thought we were going to get a central defensive midfielder as well, we didn't. We were like, could that money not, you know, is that an area that we needed to strengthen, when we all knew that is the area that we needed?
Do you not remember someone on United stand saying about Sancho multiple times, though? Long before we signed him.
Yeah, I do. Yes.
But I'm still hoping he becomes good. But I said it so many times, and it is kind of to a lesser extent, like you mentioned before about Bellingham, it is kind of a worry as well, just because even though like they're English players, so you think that they'll adapt to the Premier League, they haven't played in the Premier League. But Sancho, my worry was always when I saw him for England, he was never impressive. And then in the Champions League, he wasn't impressive. And Bellingham quite often isn't impressive for England, but the Champions League, he has been good. So that makes me less worried about Bellingham than it did about Sancho.
Yeah. The one, just to touch on Bellingham briefly, the one thing that I think he obviously does have in his favour is he's had that season at 16 or whatever in the Championship. Yeah. And like the Championship is a tough league. Like it's games week in, week out. And obviously kind of ridiculously hard.
Had City youth football.
Yeah. We don't obviously stray too far away from the point, but Alan says here, Spurs are very poor against top 6 teams, but we showed what you need to do against them. Chelsea at weekend was the bigger match. Ten Hag got it right. Interesting. I think, look, realistically for Manchester United, every match is as big as the next one, right? You've got to take every one as it comes. But Kev, do you think Luke Shaw is starting to cement his place back into, you know, that starting 11? We saw the first few games, Malacia. Well, that Liverpool game, Malacia was great, right? He was unbelievable. And then, since then he's kind of dropped off. And it seems that Luke Shaw's obviously kind of taken that opportunity and has really excelled when he's obviously been given the chance. And we're obviously seeing a brilliant version that he has to offer. It's a shame that it takes, another left back to kind of bring that out of him.
Every time.
Yeah. Obviously, we saw it with Telles, and then again he dropped off, and then now we're seeing it again. But I kind of related to Dalot, and again he had an unbelievable game. But what I just don't want to see is, because he's not being tested at all. Obviously, I don't really know what's going on with Wan-Bissaka, injuries, or whether he just is out of favour, whatever. But because there is no one, he knows that every game he's going to start at right back. Is that like a mental thing that he might think, it doesn't really matter if I don't have as good of a game today? I mean, as professional sports athletes, these guys shouldn't obviously be thinking like that at all. Yeah. But it is something that will go through their heads. And I think the question is, obviously, that I posed to you, Kev, is more obviously about Shaw. That do you think that he is or has cemented that kind of left back space for the foreseeable future?
Yes, if I touch back on current form, he gets in that team. You think before the Manchester derby, and I remember Malacia was starting, and our very own Ricky was saying, Luke Shaw is different gravy, he said on Twitter, which was fair enough. Now, I just said to him at that moment in time, I said, gravy's lovely, but why switch to gravy, when you're enjoying a nice, hot curry sauce? Which Malacia was at that moment in time. He was the player in form, and he deserved to start the derby, regardless of what Luke Shaw, England caps, more experienced. Listen, on reflection of it, he gets taken off. He was run riot, but it's a bit unfair on Malacia, because a hell of a lot of United players didn't cover themselves in any glory at the Etihad that day. It was disgraceful that first half. City were on a different level, but I didn't think United didn't really get anywhere near them, put a foot in anywhere near what they did this evening, as you rightly say, when they got the crowd going. With Dalot, I would, like you say, a top sports person shouldn't rest on the laurels. They shouldn't be looking and thinking, it doesn't matter what performance I put in today. And I'd like to think there's a lot more to him. I mean, doesn't his contract expire at the end of the season? Hopefully we're not getting caught out by these, all these insane performances because he's playing for a new contract. I don't see him as a player like that. This is why earlier on I said he is easily the most improved player at Manchester United. I'm not used to it, because under previous managers, you name me a player under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that had a rapid improvement where you were like, I can see exactly what's going on here. They are working with this kid on the training field. He is improving. Because Dalot under Solskjaer, well, he was loaned out to AC Milan, so he got no chances at all. Looked like he might exit and leave to AC Milan. He comes back, and the one part of his game that's always been questioned has been defending. And I've always said, attacking-wise, not a problem with Dalot. Defending, but tonight, defending-wise, you can tell on the training field they have been working, and he has been listening. And this is where Wan-Bissaka, I always said, was a better defender than Dalot, but getting forward offers absolutely nothing. And it's a major part of football, isn't it? These left and right back, like you said earlier, look at the likes of Cancelo at City, where he is, his heat map on the pitch or whatever. It's insane. You're like, you're supposed to be a right back, man. What are you doing over there? But it's effective. And Dalot was at that this evening. There was certain points where I'm looking and thinking, what's he doing up here? But effective. He played out of his skin.
It's the new position, I feel, for like kids growing up. They're looking at, Trent, Cancelo. It's the new position they want to be, because right back and left back is, there's the saying, nobody grows up wanting to be a Gary Neville.
I was literally just about to say that.
It's now completely different. It's when you're left and right back, obviously different standards of football is completely different, but you do join the attack. You don't just sit back and, because when I grew up, admittedly, I'm only 25, but when I grew up, left and right back were the centre backs that weren't good enough to play centre back, just like Gary Neville, who ended up playing left and right back. But now it is completely
like
different.
The position nowadays.
Yeah, it is like
It tends to be. It tends to be wingers, doesn't it? It tends to be wingers now that they're either not good enough to be a winger. So look at Ashley Young at Manchester United. You know, in his latter years, Antonio Valencia was signed by Manchester United. You know, was supposedly Cristiano Ronaldo's replacement. That's a story for another day or a debate. But he was supposed to be our right winger. You know, converted into this kind of right-sided defender, really, because it wasn't good enough.
But wingers even themselves aren't wingers that we grew up with. I guess a fullback now is more like a winger was like back when we were watching football, really, like when we were kids, wasn't it?
But you can have that player tucked up. You don't need a Neville, a Beckham, you know, whoever it is, an Everett, a Giggs down them channels when you can get one player that can do both jobs. And that's where some teams are so lucky to have. As you said earlier about Trent, you know, there has been so much criticism about his defending. Will he get in the England team? Even the way he defended against us, Alanga, you know, that was a Ten Hag tactic. Get at Trent. He cannot defend. But don't get me wrong, up the other end of the field, he's absolutely amazing. So it outweighs
that Jose game against Liverpool, where it was like 90% of our attacks came down Liverpool's right-hand side because it was just Rashford on Trent. Yeah. I think that was when Rashford was first starting out as well, was it? Where he like completely ruined Trent that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It haunts him, that game. It haunts him. I think that's the
game that Trent... as well.
Yeah, he said, I think it was in an interview, and I don't actually know what the question was, but he said, you know, that he even calls it that Rashford game. He doesn't even say, that game against United. He says that Rashford game. So far in his head. But Graham says here, Chelsea's midfield will run at us. Unlike Spurs, Fred is poor at tracking runners. Much harder game at the weekend coming up. Threefold Path says Dello and Shaw both playing for new contracts. That should make them both play well. Well, we hope. I beg, because we don't need that situation, obviously, where they get given the contract and then it all goes Pete Tong. But guys, you can get. Oh, there's another super chat coming. Here we go. We'll say this. Duncan says, welcome to the home of Casemiro. Such a lovely place. Fred and Bruno at the home of Casemiro. Any time of year, you can find them here. Lovely. Thanks for that. I didn't really feel like bursting out a song at quarter past. I'll be honest with you.
Come on, man. We've won.
But before, if you guys want to get your questions in, I'm going to pose one more kind of topic for debate while you guys do get your questions in, and then we'll put it to the panelists. But we obviously got to touch on the Ronaldo kind of incident. Don't want to dampen the mood, but I want to get your guys' thoughts. Kev, we'll come to you first. Obviously, he left pretty much, and I saw in the interviews afterwards when they asked Ten Hag, did he have the conversation with him? You know, was he given the okay? And he didn't say yes, he didn't say no, but you could clearly see that he hadn't told him. You know,
well, he said,
they
I'll
hadn't
deal
had
with
that
him tomorrow. So
yeah,
that
exactly
basically means no.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, this guy is the best, you know, one of, if not the best football player I've ever seen play. You know, a lot of people would have grown up on this channel watching him play. But what example and we've just put on the best performance we have this season, and he's, you know, run off down the tunnel with 4 minutes left to play. Admittedly, as you've said, it is very Ronaldo-like, you know, to kind of draw attention to him, and you know that's what he'll get asked, Ten Hag, in the press conferences about that, rather than how good the performance was, you know. But basically, what's your thoughts? It's just disappointing to see, isn't it? Really, I feel it's almost just a bit like, why does it have to be like this game when we've played so well? I guess there's never a good time for it, right? But it's just an annoying kind of situation.
I think the disappointment, there is anger there, because I touched on it earlier, and probably, do you know what? It's a mixture of emotions, exactly the same as the day that he re-signed for Manchester United, and we were here on the United stand. You know, I'm almost in tears, and I knew it was going to go one way or the other. But for me, the big thing was seeing Ronaldo again in a Manchester United shirt, being able to take me 12-year-old son to see him, because he never thought he'd get the opportunity to see him at United again. You know, I've ticked them boxes, and then it doesn't matter how many shirts he sold for Man United and that. It's what he does on the pitch. I just think the upsetting side of it is, I was there for his debut when he come on against Bolton, and nobody really knew much about him. We'd spent 12 million on him, and he comes on for this cameo appearance. And me and my friend were like, oh my God, what have we just witnessed? This lad could be, the greatest. And I, honestly, we said this at the time, no exaggeration. He's gone on to be the greatest Manchester United player I've ever seen, easily. And the upsetting thing is, he storms off. It's just typical Ronaldo, though. You know what to expect from him. He has taken away a great 2-0 victory and turned it into the pantomime, which it is at the minute. I'm fed up of seeing him sat on the bench. We don't need so many camera shots of him. This is the media as well working it. We're 2-0 up, and it's going to Ronaldo to see what's his reaction. Oh, he's not smiling. Who cares? I don't care. I care about Manchester United and the fact that we're winning 2-0. Get the camera back on the game, please. I don't really care about Ronaldo, and that's where I am at the minute. It sounds really harsh. It's like some, really, really bad breakup, with somebody, some relationship you've been in. But you need to put sentiment to one side and everything. You need to take his age into consideration. You need to take into consideration that this is supposed to be one of the most professional, idolised footballers in the world. What has he done at United? He has scored goals, but I talk about these kind of things. Smashing a phone out of a kid's hand was that at Everton when we got beat. And this evening, again, it's just another headline that's designed to be all about Ronaldo when it doesn't need to be. It should be about Manchester United. And the sad thing is, that Ronaldo isn't bigger than Manchester United. I've seen a few people saying in the comment section, that the club is bigger than any player. The club will always be there. And Ronaldo, unfortunately for him, time isn't on his side. He's coming towards the end of his career. And if we're talking about professionalism, he didn't go away on the pre-season tour with Manchester United because he wanted to move from United. So if any of the Ronaldo fanboys want to, get back at me on that one, this guy wanted to leave United because he thinks he's better than the Europa League. He's being paid how much money a week? He's contracted to United, and nobody else wanted him. What does that say about any other team in world football? No Champions League team give him, the thing that he craves most, which is really personal honours, isn't it? He's in it to win, don't get me wrong, but he wanted to leave United. He wanted to get away from us in the summer. He didn't get his move. So now we have to be subjected to basically him throwing his toys out the pram left, right and centre. And it's sad because he'll go down as one of the greatest Manchester United footballers of all time and arguably the greatest footballer ever to walk this planet, depending where you sit on, Messi, Ronaldo, George Best, Pele, Maradona, whatever route. Yeah, it's such an open kind of subject. Everybody will have a different answer, but in our lifetime, they have been at the peak of their powers, and they are on the decline. It's sad, but it happens. It's football.
A lot of people in the comments actually saying, "What about if he had diarrhea and just needed a poo?" You never know. You never know. But Sean says here, I wouldn't even name Ronaldo on the bench next game to make my point. I love the guy, but this is all the owner's fault. Was easily avoidable if we had let him go. I imagine there's quite a few reasons as to why we kind of didn't let him go. But we don't want to get into that. Nick says, imagine what an enthusiastic, motivational Ronaldo could do for this team, staying on and encouraging the players. With age, he hasn't learned wisdom. I mean, maybe he has learned wisdom, right? Just for his own personal benefit and gain rather than... Well, I mean, a lot of people in the media are saying that he's totally professional, training ground and everything like that. So, I mean, you never truly know the situation. But Rory also says here, given the finances, who is a realistic striker option in January or the summer? Because there won't even be 50 million for Tony. Give me solutions, not problems. Okay, first question. I'll go to... Okay, Alex has given his answer. That's there's actually a video coming out that me and Beth did. It should be this week, I imagine, where we actually go through like some striker options that could be a possibility in either January or the summer. And obviously, Gakpo, as Alex says there, was one of them. So yeah, we'll go to you then, Alex. Is that your guy that you'd go to in the January window? Because I'll be honest, I mean, it would be one for me as well, but if we don't get him then, I don't see us getting him at all. I feel like it will be a little bit, too late. Someone else will get him.
Yeah, and he is Dutch, right?
Yeah.
But he's back up to Memphis for the striker position. But if he comes on, like, say something happened to Memphis and then he plays well at the World Cup, like we say, he might be in our price range at the moment, but he isn't going to be after the World Cup if he has a good World Cup. So that's the one thing you have to balance it with. And normally I would be nervous about signing Eredivisie players, but Martinez has been absolutely a revelation for us, like my absolute favourite player. And Anthony, I had a few question marks in like the first few games, but then I feel like he's really growing into his role. And like, even though he hasn't been like scoring like the last few games, I thought his overall performances have been really good, and he is looking like a threat. So like Ten Hag clearly knows what he's doing. And Malacia, even, okay, we bought him for a cheap amount. He isn't as talented as Shaw, but he still played a great role this season, and I think he still will play a role this season. So Ten Hag knows like the sort of players to get from the Eredivisie. Aside from Gakpo, we talk about Ivan Toney, but people always talk about him and like, oh yeah, that if he's like some simple player to get. Brentford, if they lose Toney, they're going down. So to him, you always say like, okay, what is a player worth? So if, like, for example, when Villa wanted 100 million for Jack Grealish, like, oh, he's no way worth 100 million. Okay, he might not be, but to Aston Villa, he was worth 100 million. And it's just the same with Ivan Toney. He isn't worth 50 million to some people. But so if Man United pay 50 million for him, that might be a scam. But to Brentford, he's worth a damn load more than 50 million, because if they go down, that's a lot more than 50 million that it's costing them. So I feel like Ivan Toney is a completely unrealistic target. I feel like people would try to have like the same sort of outlook on Mitrovic as well. But again, Fulham would never sell him for 50 million or close to that either. So it is really difficult. I feel like with Gakpo, we did like you saw the comments from him. He was actually saying that it was really close to happening, wasn't he? And that he even said it's a shame it didn't happen. So I feel like because we panicked and signed Casemiro and Anthony for a combined like 170 million, they couldn't really justify getting them. I think at the time they were saying it was between Gakpo and Anthony, even though we seem to be getting Gakpo more as like a striker, even though he can play on the wing as well. But it seemed like as soon as we signed Anthony for that much money, they weren't going to sign Gakpo. But I feel like if we wouldn't have signed Anthony, we would have signed Gakpo. But I don't have regrets about him. But then, like, now all the rumours are coming out that because we spent so much on those two players at the end of the window, we have nothing to spend in January. And based on our track record with the Glazers and stuff, I'm pretty sure that we will have nothing to spend in January. But in the summer, like I said, if he has a good World Cup and he continues in the form he's in, because he's obviously in brilliant form at the moment, then we're going to get priced out of a move by how little we will have to spend. And I think we will go all out again for De Jong. And if we don't go for De Jong, like you mentioned earlier, Bellingham is who we'll go for. And I feel like if we sign De Jong or Bellingham, that will be our whole budget gone, because they're both going to go for like close to 100 million. Well, close to 100 million with De Jong and over 100 million for Bellingham.
Yeah, I dread to think how much these players are going to cost nowadays. But Super Chat here from Cold Blood. Cristiano is being the most professional player since the beginning of the season, and he's getting disrespected by this Ten Hag fraud. Wake up, mate.
Ten Hag fraud. The manager of Manchester United.
I mean,
has this not been the problem at Manchester United? The so-called players have been rocking up at Manchester United. There has been no authority. Nobody getting disciplined or anything, and everyone's been able to come in and out of the Aon Centre like it's some kind of child daycare. There's been no standards, nothing at this club. Yet we get a manager, the manager that I wanted and a lot of United fans wanted, and now it has to be turned into choosing a side over a player like Ronaldo or Ten Hag. Ten Hag is in the right here. He picked a team that he knew or was confident in beating Tottenham tonight. We've done it 2-0. So there doesn't have to be this Ronaldo side story. Sorry.
Can I just say as well, on the Ronaldo thing, like, I got swarmed, like I said to you guys before we went on the air, I got swarmed by his fanboys that they literally see zero logic, but you have it all the time with this new player FC thing that they clearly support Ronaldo over Man United, and I assume they were supporting Juventus last year. But if Ronaldo was, and he wasn't exactly groundbreaking, I still think Zlatan at that age at United had a better run than Ronaldo did last season. But let's say if Ronaldo was in last season's form this season, and he was getting dropped, you could say, okay, I can understand where they're coming from, mate. Okay, Ten Hag maybe doesn't think he fits the system, but Ronaldo's still banging in hat-tricks like he was last season. But he's been poor this season. He has been given chances. And it's like the same with like when we were talking about like Van der Beek and stuff last season, season before. They're giving chances. If you're not taking your chances, then that's down on you. Martial has played like, what has it been, like 90 minutes overall this season and completely outperformed Ronaldo's whole season in about 90 minutes worth of football. And he's been injury prone the entire time, come back at like 50% fitness and still outperforming him. It's like it happened. Age catches up with everyone, and it's just that his style of play doesn't fit Ten Hag's system, and the system is always more important than an individual player. Last season, we were overly reliant on Ronaldo, and it's the exact same thing that happened in the Zlatan days, where you go completely through one player, and it's to the detriment of the rest of the team. And that's what people that just they're a fan of a player. I get it. I was a massive fan of Beckham. Beckham's my all-time favorite player. But when Beckham got shipped off to Real Madrid, I didn't suddenly turn on Fergie and be like, get this fraud out the club. People just seem to, these days, just support a player over the club. It's just really annoying.
Yeah, it's a different life for the kids nowadays, and it is completely different. But Threefold Path says, I think it will be Osimhen in the summer. Glazers love to blow the budget on one marquee signing. I mean, there's plenty of
another
marquee
like
signings.
£80+ million
Yeah,
signing.
there's a lot of marquee signings out there. Obviously, Bellingham, Frankie de Jong's been mentioned as well. But Rory also says, if Ronaldo leaves in January, we save £550,000 times 28 weeks in wages, which is 15.4 million, include the dividends, and that's Gakpo paid for about 35 million apparently. Well, it's interesting because obviously, look, he's having the season of his life right now, and he's almost sticking the big middle finger up to Man United, saying this is what you could have had right now. And if he keeps the season up, and as Alex says, has an incredible World Cup, if he does play a big part of that, then his price is going to be double that, triple that, especially with the Man United tax that happens nowadays. But it's it could get very, very silly. But we're going to end the show there. Everyone in the comments has stopped asking questions and is just on the Ronaldo bandwagon at the minute. So we'll leave it there before it gets silly. I appreciate everyone for stopping by. Kev, as always, it's a pleasure, especially after a huge 3 points.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we won a game, or especially like a Premier League game where I'm asked to come on. I get all the difficult ones, me. The Man Cities, the 6-3s, where I have to sit here and try and put some kind of brave face on. But I get to, really enjoy my evening and get up for work tomorrow with a right spring in my step. So been good talking to you, and thanks to everyone in the chat.
I managed to time my holiday really well with that Man City game, so I didn't have to do the forum.
Stroke of genius.
Alex, first show together, mate. Good to obviously meet you, and it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, great to meet you too. Just happy, such a dominating performance, and let's just hope the Chelsea game will go just as smoothly.
That's it. So we're away at Chelsea at the weekend, so there'll obviously be another fan forum. I believe Beth will be hosting that one at the weekend, so a change of personnel, maybe. I'm not sure who's going to obviously be on, but we'll look forward to it. Obviously, another 3 points could be huge, because I think we're 3 points behind Chelsea, right? I want to say. So
we're only 4 points off City, I think.
So, yeah, it's huge. It's huge. There could be big swings in the table coming up. Just need to keep winning. But yeah, as I say, appreciate it, and we'll catch you after the win, after the Chelsea win. That's what I'm saying. Bye-bye.